everyone. Welcome to Miller's Military Moments, where Master Sergeant Jason Miller, hey, that's me, is going to share parts of his 20-year Army career. Moments from the U.S. to Kuwait, Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan. Weekly episodes will be posted on my website at millersmilitaryMoments.com. So bookmark that site and stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Miller's Military Moments. I am your host, Master Sergeant Miller, and thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. So I want to send a big thank you to all those who sent me support after last week's special midweek episode, where I talked about my diagnosis of chronic PTSD and how I dealt with suicidal thoughts in my recovery. So I definitely appreciate all the support that some of y'all have sent me, so thank you for that. A couple of exciting announcements. I have a weekly newsletter that's going to go out every Wednesday, and if you want to be included in that, or if you want to receive that weekly newsletter, all you have to do is go to the website, millersmilitarymoments.com, and find the subscribe button. If you're on mobile, most of you are, scroll all the way down to just past the latest episode button, and you'll see a spot right there where you can put in your email address and hit subscribe, and it says sign me up for the weekly newsletter. Or you can scroll further down bottom of the page on mobile and it'll be the same thing. So check that out and subscribe if you'd like and receive the weekly newsletter. It's going to have updates to the podcast, updates to the blog, and stuff like that. So the other exciting thing is, hey, I made my first blog post this week, and it's on the site, Seeking Behavioral Health Therapy in the Army. So it's kind of a continuation of episode 5 with some other details in it, and that's what I plan on using the blog for. So I'll sometimes add to an episode or just something a little bit different. But please, hey, go check that out, and you can find that under the blog posts page. It'll be there. So you can find that on mobile or even on the home page. And if you're on mobile, you'll scroll down almost to the bottom and you'll see recent posts, and it'll say Seeking Behavioral Health Therapy in the Army. You can click on there, read the blog post, and feel free to comment and create or continue the conversation. And there's also a contact form on there. If you want to contact me directly, you can send me questions, comments, or anything. So some pretty exciting things coming. The website's coming along, and so, hey, go check it out and keep up with all the podcast episodes and the blog posts. So today's episode is One Car Family and No Car Barracks Soldier. Might not seem like a big deal or a big challenge to be a one-car family, in the Army. There's a lot of people, in society out there in the world that have one car or no cars. So this definitely isn't me trying to say, we have it harder or anything like that. But there are some challenges that are posed to us that being a one-car family or a no-car barracks soldier, if you're a single soldier living in the barracks, that make it tough. Most Army posts, and most likely Air Force as well, and Marines and Navy, maybe the Navy, but most posts are not in a city. So with public transportation, to make it easier to move around, I know today, there's more options with Lyft and Uber and stuff like that, but back in 2002, there weren't those options, and it still presents some challenges being, a one-car family. And so who drives the car? And who doesn't? Who stays home? Or what if you're both working and your spouse has to get to work too? And what if you have kids and you've got to get the kids to school? Or what if they need to go to daycare? Or there's all kinds of challenges. And then there's a lot of other even challenges for the soldier that's on post, or that drives to work on post and has to do certain things. So at first we'll look at how this works with the spouse not working. So at first, when we got to Fort Hood, my spouse was not working. She was pregnant at the time, but was not working at first. And just a reminder, we lived off post, which about 20 minutes to the gate. And sometimes, even if you live on post, it's not close to where you work or do PT or whatever. So it can be anywhere on post. And again, Fort Hood at the time. Well, it's still really big. I mean, it's huge, and you can live miles away from where you work. And another interesting thing about that is for aviation, often the airfield, because of its size naturally, is in another location and can be off post. For example, at Fort Bragg, it's off post in another location. And recently talking to a friend of mine who had been stationed at Fort Drum, his very first duty station, when he was new to the Army up there. So they lived 45 minutes away from the airfield, so where he worked. And so that poses some challenges there. And then, for example, Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, there's some challenges there with most people will live close to the airfield there, but the actual main post is Fort Stewart, which I think is 45 minutes to an hour away. I may be mistaken in that, but it's pretty far away. But so most people will live near the airfield, but sometimes have to go to Fort Stewart to do things. And when it comes to, well, who has the car and how do we get there, there definitely is some challenges to that. And then depending on how far you live and stuff like that. So another interesting thing about like being in the Army and where all the different places you have to go. So it's not like you go, if you're a civilian and you go to your normal job and you work, let's just say an office building or even a warehouse or whatever the case is, it's that location and you're there all day and you work and then you leave. Well, in the Army, so we do physical training in the morning, PT. So that's at one location on post. Then we need to go to the hangar to work, which is at another location on the airfield, so several miles away. Then we may have to go to the motor pool, which we've talked about before, which is several miles away from the hangar. And there's other places that we have to go, like the human resources section, we call it the S1, personnel actions clerks, other support agencies that we may have to go to take care of just anything that goes on with ourselves or the Army. That's at another location. So you're talking locations of things that we need to go do and be at that are miles apart. So if you don't have a car, then you are relying on someone else to take you there and to get you there. And it is logistically challenging. So, and then if you have the car and you can go to all those places and do all the stuff you're supposed to do for the Army, well, your spouse is now at home, can't go grocery shopping, can't go run errands. If they need to take the kids to an appointment, it poses another challenge. I mean, yes, the Army lets you leave to go take your kids to the appointment. Now, sometimes you may get a little flack from your leaders, which is wrong, but it happens. So yeah, there's those other challenges now. So you can't do a lot of those things till maybe you come home later, and that can create, obviously later nights trying to run your errands and stuff like that. Or some of those places aren't open once the soldier gets home with a car. So there's all those kind of challenges that are going on with, having the car and who's having the car. Now, another one, so if the spouse is working, so at first, my spouse, she was not working, and I would tend to take the car and do my thing, and then we would kind of figure out the other stuff, on other times. But she did start working that summer of 2002, all the way pretty much up until our son was born in October. And so how do we do that with both of us working in one car? And, so one option is, and this is how we did it at first, she took me to PT. So remember, PT is at 6:30. So, and at Fort Hood, we had to hit the gate by 5:30 or you weren't making it in time. So now she's got to get up really early. So she would end up taking me to PT and then dropping me off and taking the car. So what that means, though, is now I'm at this location for PT, so I've got to bring, my bag, a gym bag or whatever the case is. I need to bring stuff to shower, do my personal hygiene stuff, and then I've got to bring my uniform and everything else and get a ride. Now I've got to get a ride from someone to take me to a place to shower, which could be the hangar, and sometimes it was, or a gym, or whatever the case is. And then I've got to get down to the hangar as well. So now I've got to ask, for a ride and depend on them to get me here, there, and everywhere. And then the other thing, she needs to come and get me then after work. So hopefully the time lines up with whenever she's getting off work, whenever I'm getting off work, and if it's not, I'm, usually she was there first is what really happened. And I was waiting. And interesting, when I was preparing for this episode and going to talk about this stuff, I was thinking about that part, like, why was she always waiting on me? Well, there's this thing called notes, and I could probably do a whole episode on the notes, waiting on the notes. So why was she always waiting on us to be released from work that day? Well, we were waiting on the notes, and this was prior to the use of technology. Prior to really the cell phone, I mean, we had them, but it wasn't, text messages wasn't as big of a thing. We had the old Nokia phones, and text messages were hard, and we didn't use all that kind of communication. So we still did a lot of face-to-face communication. So before you were allowed to leave, you had to receive all the quote notes and the information from your leaders about what was happening the next day or the day after or whatever the case was. And often we would wait an hour or more on these notes, and sometimes these notes would come out and they would be like, be at PT tomorrow at 6:30. Like, really? That's it? We waited over an hour for that? Those are the notes? Y'all sat up there in a meeting for that long and that's what we get? Like, gosh, okay. So, anyway, sometimes, yes, she's waiting out in the parking lot, and you can see several spouses out there waiting for their husbands to get off work. So, yeah, so that would happen, and, she'd have to come get me, and then it would just, sometimes it would be late. And then another challenge with that is childcare. So, not for us at the time, because Addie was still pregnant, but providing, so childcare on post, well, they close, I think it was earlier than this. So now they close at 6:15 p.m. I think back then they closed at 5:30 or 6. I could be wrong, but regardless, 6:15. So they charge you money for every minute that you're late after 6:15, and it can get expensive. And with one car, you've got to make sure, okay, well, I got to go get the kids. I'll come back and pick you up. Or what if you don't know when you're going to get released? You're sitting there waiting. The Army, always comes first. So it's, no, I got to wait till I'm released, go pick up the kids, pile them in the car. Now you've got the kids out in the parking lot waiting, for the spouse to get released. And kids are hungry. Kids ready to get home. They've been in daycare. They're excited. They're also excited to see their parents. There's all those things going on. So, how do we work out those details? And you saw the struggle. I saw the struggle every day with families trying to figure that out, So, so as she started working, so, what else do we do to solve that problem? Because she did take me to PT and drop me off for a while. And in fact, one time we were in line at PT to go through the gate early in the morning. And I'll tell you, my wife, God love her, she was incredible. I mean, she has always been an incredible military spouse and an incredible wife and mother. And through all the stuff that she has gone through to support me and my career and everything. But she had morning sickness all the way up until our son was born. I mean, it was rough. And it's just so rough because if you've been in that situation, there's nothing you can do about it. You just like put your hand on her back and just try to, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And, we kept hoping like, okay, it's going to end soon. It's going to end soon. Right. And it just, poor thing. She had morning sickness. So all the way up until our son was born in October, and it was just rough. And then you've got the Central Texas heat in that summertime just was really, really rough on her. But here she is every morning getting up really early and taking me to PT so that she can go to work also and help us and our family make a little bit of money. And, so she was a real trooper. And So one of the times we're in there, and of course we can laugh about it now. Nobody was hurt in this incident, so that's great. But so in the line, it's a long line. Let's just say a mile long of cars, and you're just kind of inching forward. It moves a little bit at a time, and so we got rear-ended. Not hard, I don't even know, 5 miles an hour maybe. It's just as you're rolling through, they just didn't hit the brakes in time and kind of bumped us a little bit hard, but not too bad. Just a little bit dent in our bumper. Anyway, we were all okay. But when she stepped out of the car and they saw she was pregnant, everybody like freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you going to have the baby right here? Do we need to call, 911? Who's got a cell phone? It's like, okay, calm down, relax. She's okay. And she was like, I'm okay. Like, it's, this isn't a big deal. I feel fine. I'm not going to have the baby right here on the side of the road. So that was another incident that happened. And, when you're trying to figure out how to get everybody to work and all that stuff, and your pregnant wife is getting up early to drive you to PT. So luckily no one was hurt and not a big deal. And, everybody got their cars fixed and stuff like that. But it can make for some really early days. So the solution that we ended up finding that really helped us long term was rideshare. And many of you probably already thought like, man, why couldn't you do that? Well, we did. And sometimes it's hard to meet people in the military. Sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's hard. And we'd only been there for a few months really. And think about if you listen to my first 60 days episode at Fort Hood, I mean I was so busy and gone a lot of it. So we didn't meet a whole lot of people, but we did happen to meet one particular family that actually lived near us. Me and they were military family also. So me and the soldier worked in the same platoon. Actually, he was an Apache mechanic and I was a Black Hawk mechanic, but we were in the same platoon, same unit. So, and then our spouses worked at the same place. So a lot of coincidences that probably wouldn't happen or doesn't happen all the time. But this one may be one of those perfect storms where we just needed some help and they needed some help. They were also a one-car family with 2 young kids. And they were both really young as well. And if you remember, we are a little bit older. At this point, I'm 27 years old and my spouse is 25. And so, but I mean, still, circumstances are such as they are. We're a one-car family. They are too. And so they were struggling with the same thing that we were. So we talked and, said, well, how do we, let's help each other. Like, we've got to figure this out. Two families, 2 cars. We all work at the same place. The husbands work at the same place. Spouses work at the same place. So we all agreed like, okay, let's figure it out. So what we did was, I think, I don't know, it changed sometimes, but like I would drive our car and I would pick up the other soldier and we would go to PT and work and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yes, he would have to kind of rely on me to take him around some places or stuff like that. But then our spouses could just focus on their timeline in the morning, of getting to their job and then getting the other family's children to daycare and those other things. And then they had a car there at their job in case they needed it. And then we had a car at our job in case we needed it. So it really helped us. I mean, tremendously, helped both families tremendously. And that worked, really we did that all the way up until our son was born in October. And then from that point, my wife stayed home. We had we were very fortunate in that opportunity for her to stay home and be able to take care of our son. And, because really, when we look at everything that happened, I mean, once my son was born, 6 months later, I was gone. 6 months later from October, I mean, in March, I was in Iraq and gone for a year. And we didn't know how long I was going to be gone at the time, or anything like that. So we were very fortunate that, she could stay home and take care of our son. And, also we formed this great relationship with this other family that we could help each other. We definitely depended on each other for all of those things, with rides and any other kind of assistance, that we needed. So we didn't fear asking. We definitely, reached out and asked, and they reached out and asked. And it was definitely a great relationship. And I'll tell you, so we made it work. And the other, crazy thing is 19 years later, we are still friends with that family, and we would still do anything that we could that's in our power for that family. So, our kids are mostly grown up now, as you can imagine, 19 years later, but it's we've all come a long way and evolved and moved all kinds of different places, but we've always stayed in touch. And they're like our first, friends, family in the Army, and it stuck, and we have been, friends with them ever since, which is really, a great story and how we made all this work. Because I'll tell you too that friendships in the military can be a fickle thing. And really, on one side of it, I'll say this: there are some amazing people in the military and some amazing families and friends, and you create some amazing, incredible relationships, lifelong relationships. On the other side, there are some people that are not great, just like everywhere else, and they can be petty, they can be mean, they can be nasty, they can be all kinds of negative, bad things. Anyway, they're out there. Not every situation is great. And this situation, anyway, was great. And we've had some other situations where we've just made some lifelong friends from being in the military as well. But this one, definitely it came from our very first duty station, which we're grateful for. And I'll, tell you, too, that sometimes relationships like these will make or break a soldier re-enlisting and staying in the Army. I mean, because really, when a soldier re-enlists and decides to stay in the Army, it's a family commitment. There is no such thing that we do it ourselves, and it's just the soldier doing all this stuff, and the spouse and the family is just over here doing their own thing. It's a family commitment. And if families have bad experiences with other soldiers and families, and sometimes you can hear about these experiences when they live on post and they're next to all military families, and they may not get along and they may not be real nice to each other. It can determine whether a family decides to stay in the Army or not. And really, that's, a loss for the Army. And a lot of times, because maybe there's a good soldier and a good family that's really committed to the Army, that's like, hey, I'm not staying in this. This isn't for me. And so the Army long term is losing a great soldier and maybe a potential great leader that could have lasting impact on hundreds of other soldiers and families. So that's the big issue, when you kind of look at, not all families are great and not all relationships are great, and just people are people. We're all human beings. We're not all nice, and that's just how it is. And but some people do decide, well, that ain't for me, so I'm not going to stay around. I'm not going to deal with you all, and not going to be around negative people like that. So it happens too. But we are lucky in this particular case that it really did. We formed a great relationship with this family, and it's amazing, and it's still great today. So we all keep up with each other's kids, and with what we're doing and stuff like that. So it's really amazing, and been grateful. We were grateful for that time, and we look back on it now, and it's like, whew, man, how would we have made it? We would have made it, but it's just, it's tough. They made it a whole lot easier on both families, helping each other and making it through those challenges. So moving over to the barracks soldier with no car. Now, I've never been a barracks soldier. When I'm talking from, the perspective I'm talking from is, one, I knew a lot of soldiers that lived in the barracks that didn't have a car. And then also when I was a leader of those soldiers that lived in the barracks, I dealt with a lot of their challenges too. So they have some of the same challenges that the married soldier does. They just live on post, but it's the same. So PT may not be near their barracks. Now, today, it's a lot better in the design of the posts in the barracks. I think most units do PT near the barracks, and then the dining facilities are near the barracks. But that's not a guarantee, and that's not everywhere. So there still are instances where they have to drive to go to physical training. Then they have to drive back, and they have to drive over to the dining facility. And then, of course, in aviation, they have to drive to the hangar, the motor pools. Now, sometimes in the other job fields, I think infantry and I think even armor with the tanks and the Bradleys, I think are a little bit better designed, where the barracks are close to the motor pools and the chow halls. So I think in some installations they are a little bit better, but they still have got to drive to some places and do some things. So they have some of those same challenges. Now, so they have to rely on other, typically soldiers in the barracks that do have a car. So, how many of them have a car, and how many of them are giving rides to everyone else? Well, what if they're not on the same schedule? Like, what if one soldier's schedule changed? Now they've got to find a ride from somebody else, and they forgot to do that. And now they're at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're trying to find a ride to PT, or 8:30, they're trying to find a ride over to the hangar. And they're running around crazy like, hey, give me a ride. Who's going to the hangar? Hey, you got a ride? And they're full, or whatever the case is. So it's definitely a challenge for them as well. Now, sometimes there's a bus that works around the post, but I'll tell you, it is not anywhere near like efficient, or it makes enough stops where it can actually pick people up from the barracks and get them to work. So it is definitely not that. We do not have that. So it is a challenge for those soldiers that do not have a car. So also that soldier comes to work, and they're at work doing stuff. They got a ride, and now they need to go somewhere to do something on post, which happens all the time. And so now they need a ride from another soldier. So from a leader's perspective, that's two soldiers that's being taken either off the aircraft, or off the lawn mowing detail, or whatever the case is, right? So that's another challenge. So now you've got two people kind of out of the training or whatever they were doing, and that's kind of annoying from a leader's perspective. But I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, the soldier has to take care of those things, and he needs a ride. You can't force them to get a car. So, and another challenge, as I was talking about earlier, like with the soldier that lined up a ride, and then the ride that other soldier slept in and is now late. So now the other soldier is late. So you've got multiple people late. So how do we deal with that? And it's not the soldier's fault that didn't have a car, because he was downstairs ready to go on time. But is it really the other soldier's responsibility to get him there on time? And so as a leader, we're presented with that conundrum of, well, I mean, the bottom line is it's your responsibility to get to PT. It's your responsibility to get to work. I don't care how you do it. You figure it out, stuff like that. But also, it's our job as a leader to have compassion and be empathetic and understand that life happens. I mean, life just happens, and things just happen. And, if it's not a continuing thing, then it's just a one-off thing. It's okay. And if it's a continuing thing, then maybe we need to step in and help you with your schedule and your alarms, or whatever the case may be. But yeah. So what do we do? It's not that soldier's fault that he coordinated for a ride, but then the leader's kind of like, well, it's not my fault you weren't here. It's your fault. So there's things we got to deal with there too. And there's another option that some posts have taken for those barrack soldiers, and particularly at Fort Bragg. We definitely have this in our aviation brigade, where some soldiers, if you work like far enough away from where you live in your barracks, the Army will give you a housing allowance so that you can go and live off post closer to where you work. So in our instance, they work almost an hour away from where they live on post. And so the Army says, okay, we'll give you that housing allowance so that you can go live over there. But that's great, but it still doesn't necessarily help them get a car. So now they're living off post in an apartment close to that airfield where they work, but they don't have a car. So you're almost forcing them to get a car or to get a roommate that has a car. And then really you're still in the same situation that we were in beforehand. And to kind of go back on that, those soldiers, if they don't take the housing allowance and live off post, there is a bus, but again, it doesn't work really well for PT, because there's no chow hall over there either. The dining facility is way back where the barracks are. So how do they do that? And how do they manage all of those things? So it's not as simple as, well, here's a housing allowance, you can live off post and live right next to that airfield, when, well, I still don't have a car. So now I'm still relying on somebody without a car and, to get me from here to there. And, a lot of people just think, well, you live in the barracks, the Army, you go in the Army gives you a place to live, they give you a place to eat, it's easy peasy, you don't even need a car. Like, sure, you don't need a car, but there's a lot of challenges that come with it of not having a car. And, then the leaders have to deal with a lot of those issues, whether the soldiers are on time or not on time, or where they need to, getting them to their places that they're supposed to be. A lot of times we'll do training like in a theater somewhere when there's a presentation. So we've got to get all these people over to the theater area. We need to basically carpool and pile everybody into cars and get them over there, which is probably better for parking anyway. But the case is they don't, have their own cars, and it presents challenges. So, one car families and no car barracks soldiers face many unexpected challenges. And, one way or another, we overcome those challenges. And that is one of the character trademarks of almost all service members and their families. We say we adapt and overcome, we face adversity, and I'll tell you that that's true. I mean, it really is true. The things we deal with, and it might seem like such a mundane topic to talk about, one car family and no car barracks soldiers, but there's a lot of things that go into that. And the one key thing is that as Army families, we adapt and overcome adversity all the time. We're constantly faced with new challenges, new things coming at us, new work schedules from the soldier. It doesn't always work 9 to 5. I mean, there's, the deployments are definitely out there and things like that. So there's a lot of things, but hey, we do a great job of overcoming that adversity. And that's one of the things I'm really proud about at my particular family, for sure. And also when I look out at so many of those other families and single soldiers too throughout the Army that I've had a privilege to serve with, how they've really overcome a lot of those adverse situations and challenges. So one car families, no car barracks, definitely some challenges, but we always can overcome them. Hey, next week I will host my first guest. I am really excited about this, and you should be too. There's going to be another perspective added to Miller's Military Moments. It's not just mine, but another perspective, another person that has had another view from my moments and episodes and was right there and through some of them. So I'm excited to bring this person on. You should be excited to listen to this episode. So next week's episode, we're going to have our first guest. And don't forget to check out our website, Miller's Military Moments, for everything else that's upcoming and exciting for the show. Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening and hanging out with me today on Miller's Military Moments. Don't forget to let your friends and family know about this podcast and our website. And you can find our website at millersmilitaryMoments.com. Until next time, have fun, reach out if you need help, reach out if you can help, and make your part of the world a better place.